The sun stood still in the sky, Joshua's impossible prayer. The battle should have been over. The enemy was already running. 5 kings had joined forces against Israel. Armies gathered like storm clouds, determined to crush the people of God before they could take the land. But instead of victory, those kings now fled in terror down the rocky slopes of Beth Horon, and Israel pursued. Swords clashed. Feet pounded against the earth. The sound of war echoed through the hills as Joshua led his men forward with relentless force. But there was a problem. The sun was going down. Shadows stretched longer across the battlefield. Darkness crept in like a closing door. And with it came danger. Because night would save the enemy. If the kings escaped under cover of darkness, they would regroup, rebuild, return. Everything they had fought for would be undone. Joshua knew it. The men knew it. Time was running out. A battle no one expected. This war had not even been Israel's idea. The Gibeonites, neighbors who had made peace with Israel, had cried out for help. 5 Amorite kings had united against them, furious that Gibeon had turned sides. Joshua didn't hesitate. He marched all night, miles in darkness. No rest, no slowing down. And when morning came, he struck. The Lord threw the enemy into confusion. Panic spread through their ranks. Soldiers turned on each other. Fear overtook strategy. Then something even more astonishing happened. As the enemy fled, large hailstones fell from the sky, striking them down with deadly precision. More died from the hail than from Israel's swords. God was already fighting for them. And still, the day was slipping away. The moment of decision. Joshua stood on the battlefield, chest rising and falling, eyes scanning the horizon. The enemy was breaking. Victory was within reach. But the sun was sinking. Every second mattered. And then, Joshua did something no man had ever done before. He didn't call for retreat. He didn't accept partial victory. He looked up, toward the sky, toward the God who had already done the impossible. And in front of all Israel, Joshua spoke. Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you moon, over the valley of Ajalon. The soldiers froze. The battlefield fell strangely quiet. Who speaks to the sun? Who commands the sky? But Joshua wasn't speaking to creation alone. He was speaking to the Creator. Heaven responds. For a moment, nothing happened. The wind moved softly across the hills. The sounds of battle lingered in the distance. Then, something changed. The light stopped shifting. The shadows stopped moving. The sun held its place in the sky. Time itself seemed to pause. The day did not end. The sun stood still, and the moon lingered. Hours passed, but the light remained. The battlefield, once racing toward darkness, now stood frozen in daylight. God had answered, not with subtlety, not with silence, but with a miracle that reached across the heavens. Victory in the extended day. The Israelites surged forward. Renewed strength filled their hearts. The enemy had nowhere left to hide, no night to escape into, no darkness to cover their retreat. Every fleeing soldier could be seen. Every king could be pursued. The battle continued, not for minutes, but for hours beyond what should have been possible. And one by one, the enemy fell. The 5 kings were captured. Their armies defeated. Their power broken. By the time the sun finally moved again, the victory was complete. Total. Decisive. Impossible, by human standards. A day like no other. As evening finally came, the land grew quiet. The battlefield stood still once more. But this time, it was not fear that filled the air. It was awe. Joshua stood looking at the sky that had obeyed the voice of God. Scripture would later say, there has never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a human being, because the Lord fought for Israel. And on that day, even the sun stood still. Commentary not. This story reveals the boldness of faith that trusts fully in God's power. Joshua's prayer was extraordinary, not because of his authority, but because of his confidence in God's promise. He did not limit his request based on human understanding, but believed that God could intervene, even in the natural order. The passage teaches that when aligned with God's will, prayer can be powerful and transformative. It also reminds believers that God is not bound by time, nature, or human limitations. Historical knot. This event is recorded in Joshua 10 verses 1 to 14. It describes Israel's battle against a coalition of Amorite kings during the conquest of Canaan. The account mentions both divine intervention through hailstones and the miraculous stopping of the sun and moon. Interpretations of this event vary among scholars, with some viewing it as a literal astronomical miracle and others as poetic or phenomenological language describing an extended day. Regardless of interpretation, the passage emphasizes that the victory was attributed to divine action rather than human strength, marking it as one of the most unique events in biblical history.